back.
I'm Bill Ross. Donna Clyburn of Geary, Oklahoma, watched rescue workers prepare to try to save 8 of her relatives who were trapped in a house by floodwater. The Highway Patrol and Blaine County officers traveled down the road until the water got too deep. 2 men put on wetsuits and then tied safety lines to each other. The house they wanted to reach was only a mile away. A few hours earlier, this would have been a leisurely walk across a peaceful alfalfa field. But now it was a race against a driving rain and a rising tide to save 8 women and children. An anxious mother and son kept a lonely vigil. Then they saw a light and the rescuers with all their family members.
Shoulders are 30 feet short. Did all of them come out?
The woman in the raft is 19-year-old Cheryl Clyburn. Ms. Clyburn is 7.5 months pregnant, and she received immediate attention. Her condition was cause for concern. It was a trying ordeal for the strongest of people, let alone a woman only 6 weeks away from childbirth. The children were safe, but the rescue wasn't easy.
Man, that water is deep down in there. I almost didn't make it out of there myself.
But they all made it out, and they're all well this Monday evening. Bill Ross, Action 4, in Geary, Oklahoma.
There was some more rain in the Norman area today, but not enough to cause any more flooding problems. The river that had risen so quickly Tuesday had finally stabilized. This crew from the U.S. Geological Survey team monitored the South Canadian all week. With these sensitive instruments, they can predict what the river will do next.
It'll hold steady because the overflow will come back into the channel for a while, and then it'll start going down as the overbanks slowly drain.
A stabilized South Canadian is good news for residents of West Norman. Yesterday, the waters forced 40 families from their homes. Today, the river slowly receded, leaving a slimy layer of ooze inside this house. Down the road, the Taylor family was busy making their home livable again. About 2 feet of water soaked the place. With a lot of help and a hard day's work, things are looking good. But R.D. Taylor is playing it cautiously.
Well, I'm going to leave everything stacked up for, they say it's going to rain some more. I'm going to leave everything that's valuable up high for another couple days anyway, till Friday. Just hope it don't come back, I guess.
The Canadian River reached heights well above its 100-year floodplain, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. But the Norman flood victims say the 12-hour advance warning they had before the flood came made a big difference. They may have lost some property, but no one was hurt. Mark O'Neill, Action 4, Norman.
The South Canadian River surprised a lot of Norman people yesterday, flooding to a depth of 5 to 6 feet in many areas. Old-timers say it's the worst in 30 years. Tonight, the waters have receded a lot. The washed-up debris is a reminder of how bad the flooding was. In certain parts of the city, families were forced to leave their homes and escape with what little they could.
Last night, there was fear that people in these apartment buildings would have to be evacuated. The waters were rising rapidly, but fortunately crested before they were forced to leave. A nearby golf course, however, was swallowed up by the floodwaters.
The river covered many of the greens and a large portion of the fairways. Still under construction, the completion date for the course will most likely be set back. This entire area borders what is called the 100-year floodplain. Several years ago, the Corps of Engineers established these boundaries to prevent people from building in hazardous areas. But now, some people think those limits may not be adequate.
My feeling is that the 100-year floodplain line in Norman is probably a little conservative. This river is wide. It's very unpredictable in some respects. I'd like to see us have a more conservative estimate and be sure that we don't get any development closer than we have right now.
At least in this case, it was only a golf course that got caught by the flood. Still a disaster, it can no doubt recover more easily than homes or businesses. In fact, one good thing may come out of it. In this case, Time spent in watering the greens may be cut back. Carol Lambert, Action 4 in Southwest Norman.
This is a wheat field, and yes, what you see here used to be a wheat field. Now it looks like a swamp in the bayou country of Louisiana. This property is located 11 miles southeast of Cashion. Gene Wishon farms here, or at least he tries to.
We've got a mess. That pretty well sums it up. This is 3 times in the last week that this has been like this, and there's no way any kind of a crop except rice could survive in a mess like this, and I'm not too sure about it.
You know anything about growing rice?
No, but I'm trying to learn.
It's a mess, all right. Even the bugs are trying to get out of it. Farmers may not have a problem with insects for a while, but Wishon says even the wheat that isn't underwater won't be worth much.
Weeds is going to really be bad, and it's going to be hard to get, and the quality of the wheat probably won't be very good. It'll be worth cutting, but that's probably about it.
Ben McCain, Action 4, 11 miles southeast of Cashion.
They have met for many hours yesterday with counsel for the subcommittee and in fact with Senator Specter himself and with counsel for the parent committee, and they're continuing those contacts today. And they're very hopeful of reaching agreement on what final ground rules will be, and since the time is drawing nigh when we have to be there, why, we have to be prepared.
For nearly 2 months, Britain has prepared, and today the task force went ashore. An aide to the Prime Minister said, "To hell with them. We're going in, they're going off." It was a classic operation to get quantities of men and material ashore quickly, to establish a bridgehead. Defense Minister Nott admitted there will have been British casualties, but emphasized that the reoccupation of the Falklands had begun.
7 weeks after the Argentine aggression, British forces are tonight firmly established back on the Falkland Islands.
The British campaign is not over until the garrison surrenders, and military experts say the next and perhaps more difficult step after the landing is to achieve a superiority of force in one area.
You begin to expand this bridgehead in a very traditional way, it seems to me. I don't think there are alternatives to that. You are going to be conscious of that fundamental equation of being able to build up your troops on the ground faster than the other man can bring his troops against you.
Mrs. Thatcher, who had been applauded in her home constituency today when the raids were announced, came home to her official residence tonight with praise for British fighting men.
We have the most marvelous fighting forces in the world. They're courageous, they're dedicated, they're fighting a just cause.
Meanwhile, her Foreign Secretary, Francis Pym, said the door was still open if Argentina wanted to talk. Britain waits tonight for the outcome of the assault on the Falklands. Queen Elizabeth, whose son, Prince Andrew, is a helicopter pilot with the fleet, made a routine public appearance, but her expression was clear evidence of her concern. James Compton, NBC News, London.
The senators want to question welfare boss Lloyd Rader about the abuse allegations. Rader will be able to call upon a lot of assistance in Washington. His secretary, George Miller, will be on hand. Public Welfare Commission Chairman Reginald Barnes will also attend. Dr. Ted Baumberger will be nearby in case the senators want to ask questions about his programs for children. Likewise, Chase Gordon, the man who used to run those programs, will also be there. Accreditation Coordinator David Schaefer will be available for questions, as well as Charles Garrett, the man who investigates fraud allegations within the department. Assistant Advocate General John Liedtke will be on hand to field questions about department abuse reports. One direct care employee, Superintendent Herschel Daney from the Diagnostic and Evaluation Center, will attend. In addition, half a dozen attorneys and support personnel will be nearby if needed. The Welfare Department officials will get the opportunity to respond to abuse allegations brought up in a subcommittee hearing 3 months ago. Investigator William Traynor also plans to introduce new testimony from 3 kids who live in state-run institutions and a 4th mystery witness. The children will testify Wednesday. Human Services Department rebuttal is scheduled for Thursday. Scott Wallace, Action 4.
I have decided to do this for only one real reason, is I'm really concerned about the future of Oklahoma County in the case of trial. The last, well, I think there's 2 or 3 things. My one reason is just my concern for what's happened in the past here with criminal prosecutions in this courthouse. We're just losing too many cases, serious felony cases that people are not being convicted of crimes that they're charged with now.
I'm angry because I can't come back to the school. I'm gonna miss all my teachers and everything and everybody else.
Miss my friends. I won't be able to see all my friends, only some of them if they go to the same school I go to. I won't get to see my teacher next year.
I feel sorry because the school is closing and I like it very much, and I've been going here for 5 years, ever since I was in kindergarten. I like it, and I hope it wouldn't close.
City buses had barely started at their new transfer point when the protest began. Some downtown businesses are complaining there is just too much congestion on Broadway between Sheridan and Robert S. Kerr because of the buses. Mass Trans officials say a recent study showed this was the best location to have bus riders make their transfers. The Copter Board of Trustees listened to those for and against the transfer site. At one point, it was brought out that some businesses felt the bus riders, in many cases, were undesirable people who caused trouble. That brought a stern response from the city manager.
I'm just not willing to sit here and listen to concerns about types of people. I'm willing to listen to people saying that we built that area for people and not for buses, and that the traffic congestion is a problem, but I'm not willing to listen to someone say that they don't like the quality of the clientele.
As an alternative location, the board suggested the transfer site be moved near the county courthouse. But county officials say they already have their share of traffic and don't want more. Downtown business representatives and Mass Trans agreed to meet again to decide on a suitable street for the buses, other than Broadway. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in downtown Oklahoma City.
Amid the lush vegetation of eastern Oklahoma, volunteers are digging up a piece of the state's past. In 1824, Fort Towson was built here to help protect Western pioneers. For 30 years, soldiers from the fort helped keep the peace on the nation's new frontier. Excavators hope to unlock secrets from the past by digging up the fort's sutler store, sort of an everyman's PX.
And the sutler himself is a civilian who has a franchise or a license to sell certain goods to the military and civilians in the vicinity that the quartermaster cannot provide to the Army. A whole host of materials that will hopefully tell us about how this store functioned and the family that lived here and transacted the business.
If you think of the history of the United States stopping, it's when the white man got here. And the history of this location right here goes back thousands of years, see? Really, the history does.
Was this ever down 10?
Everyone here is a volunteer. Housewives and accountants sift through soil, searching for clues about what life was like 15 decades ago.
The fort burned at one time, they said, and it's evident in a lot of the pieces of pottery we find. It's obvious that they were in a fire, they're smoked, or the glaze would be cracked on the pieces we find.
Each square holds a different treasure.
Some other nails, another nail.
Recovered artifacts undergo a good washing and inspection. Later, they'll be sent to a laboratory for further study. The Oklahoma Anthropological Society will forward its findings to the State Historical Society so that historians can faithfully restore the sutler store to its original condition. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Fort Towson.
It is also known as Decoration Day, a day on which the graves of soldiers making the supreme sacrifice would be decorated. All deceased veterans are now honored by ceremonies like this one at Arlington Memorial Cemetery. Flowers, like the traditional poppy, become the living's tribute to the dead.
Clyde Higgins, Robert Higgins, Jesse G. LaFleur.
The names of last year's deceased veterans who are buried in Arlington were read aloud in the cold morning air. Their purpose remembered by one flower and one white cross.
Elmer A. Ray, John Robertson.
Hard! 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 Hard!
As the crackling gunfire fades away, come thoughts of old soldiers. They never die, goes the saying. They just fade away. But the memory of their existence and their sacrifice is always near enough to touch. Tony Stizza, Action 4.
trying to stop heavy turnover. That's the main reason Oklahoma City Police received an average pay hike of 10.5%. In dollars and cents, it means a new recruit will soon start at $1,129 a month. And more experienced officers, such as lieutenants, can earn as much as $2,164.56 a month. Contract negotiators feel more money keeps good people on the job. A random survey of officers indicates the new contract was pleasing in a number of ways.
I've been down here for 13 years, and as far as I'm concerned, it's probably the best contract we've had.
Why is that?
Well, as far as money-wise, and it just benefits the older officer to keep the older officer here at the department, where we're losing some older officers that we shouldn't be.
I think probably the contract's the best that we've had since I've been on the department. It's not only for the new officer coming on, but also the veteran officer that's been on quite a while.
So what are your feelings on this newest contract?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. Of course, it's going to help me because it's going to help me in my retirement. But it's one of the best contracts that I think that we've ever had. And finally, after all these years, we've gotten one that, I feel is comparable to the knowledge of the people down here.
The new contract goes into effect on July 1st. With the pay issue solved, city officials were able to include a no-strike clause in the contract. But as long as both sides work well at the bargaining table, it's doubtful there will ever be talk of a strike. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Back in the car, so I can reach the car when I pull my car left.
The biggest raid was at JB's Easy nightclub on Southwest 44th. This man was one of 15 alleged drug dealers authorities were looking for. Everyone arrested was to be booked at Midwest City Police Headquarters and then transferred to Oklahoma County.
Okay, I mean, what you did.
Police checked IDs to see which of the club's patrons were the suspects they had warrants to arrest. Police officers searched almost everyone in the bar as they determined who needed to be taken into custody. The police were primarily looking for dealers, not drugs, but they found this bag of pills on the floor behind the bar. This woman was arrested for having possession of a controlled substance. She was searched by a policewoman, handcuffed, and then taken away to be booked. Midwest City Police say she is one of 4 people arrested at the club. Simultaneous raids at homes around the city have led to 4 more arrests.
Hey, that second.
For the people at Easy Times, there were no good times Thursday night. Bill Ross, Action 4 in Southwest Oklahoma City.
Very happy about it. It's a very substantial wage rate increase for the employees, and they couldn't be more tickled about it. There was about 20 different pay range changes that we worked very hard on that the city agreed to. Moving our inspectors up, and our licensed skilled trades were also moved up at a higher rate of pay, so they got a substantial wage increase.
here, getting the attention of the people, letting them know that there are activists out here supporting and working actively for the ERA, and giving them an idea that if they are supporting the ERA and they want to do something about it, you know, it's not an unusual thing to go ahead and ask what they can do and get out there and be active themselves.
Some of you have already started petitions, haven't you? And on those we can just hang on to.
About 40 more residents met in the parking lot of the Moore Community Center to continue a petition drive against the school board. The board has terminated 6 administrators for allegedly turning in false expense reports. The 6 are contesting the board's decision. These people aren't sure how many signatures they've accumulated so far, but they say they have a lot of community support. However, they're not sure the petitions will do much good.
Well, I can't judge what the board will choose to do. I can only say that we're hoping they will have the integrity to take into consideration what more people are asking them to do now than elected them. They have more people now against them than actually elected them.
And ask for the school board's resignation if they don't abide by what the citizens want, because they are elected people. Would you like to sign it?
Yeah, definitely. Lysandra Fowler went to a shopping center to collect signatures. She seemed to get a favorable response. And there's been action on the legal front. The Moore School District filed lawsuits here at the Cleveland County Courthouse on Monday against 2 Moore school administrators. The school board's lawsuits claim 2 administrators, Elmer Heck and Michael Ossenkop, turned in false meal claims after a trip to Houston in February. The amounts involved are only about $20 or $30, but the board is also seeking $10,000 in consequential and punitive damages. And the board's attorney says more than money is involved.
One must remember that the men who are involved here are educators and are in the position of setting an example for the children of the school district. And that makes a great deal of difference in the way the school district approaches the matter.
Norman attorney Tom Lucas represents Elmer Heck, and he has different ideas.
He'll spend a lot of money defending this claim because, as a matter of principle, he must prove his innocence. They'll spend a lot of money trying to prove him guilty. They'll spend far more than it's worth. He'll spend far more than it's worth.
Bill Ross, Action 4 in Norman.